A causal connection will exist whenever the evidence that was located was obtained as a direct result of a charter breach, meaning if not for the conduct of the state agent towards the accused, the evidence would have never been found. An example of a causal link would be where an officer is carrying out a criminal investigation against an accused through questioning, a form of detention under Section 9, but the accused has not yet been informed of the reasons for the officer's questioning, nor has he been informed that he has the right to retain and instruct counsel and be given the opportunity to do so, all rights guaranteed under Section 10 of the Charter. If during the questioning the accused were to make incriminating statements to the officer or provide the officer with information that would lead to the finding of evidence that would normally not have been found if not for the accused's statements, the evidence will be deemed to have been obtained as a direct result of the charter violation. Another example of a causal connection would be where an officer finds cannabis in an accused's pockets after an unreasonable and illegal search. The cannabis in the accused's pockets was only obtained as a direct result of the unconstitutional conduct of the officer. Prior to the decision in Regina v. Therens, which was later confirmed in Regina v. Strachan, a causal connection was the only connection sufficient for evidence to be deemed to be obtained in a manner which violated a charter right. During the dissenting opinion in Therens, Justice Ladain not only confirmed the causal connection approach, but also introduced the scenario of a charter violation which occurs during the course of evidence being obtained. The first requirement suggests that there must be some connection or relationship between the infringement or denial of the right or freedom in question and the obtaining of evidence the exclusion of which is sought by the application. Some courts have held or appear to have assumed that the relationship must be one of causation. In my opinion, the words obtained in a manner that infringed or denied any rights or freedoms guaranteed by this charter do not connote or require a relationship of causation. It is sufficient if the infringement or denial of the right or freedom has preceded or occurred in the course of the obtaining of the evidence. It is not necessary to establish that the evidence would not have been obtained before the violation of the charter. Such a view gives adequate recognition to the intrinsic harm that is caused by a violation of a charter right or freedom apart from its bearing on the obtaining of evidence. I recognize, however, that in the case of derivative evidence, which is not what is an issue here, some consideration may have to be given in particular cases to the question of relative remoteness. This alternative Justice Ladain speaks of is one of a temporal connection. A temporal connection may be sufficient to have evidence deemed to have been obtained in a manner that infringed the charter. In Strachan, Justice Ladain's opinion of a temporal connection was confirmed by the Supreme Court via Chief Justice Dixon's criticism of the singular causal connection approach to Section 24(2). Isolating the events that caused the evidence to be discovered from those that did not is an exercise. In my view, reading the phrase obtaining a matter as opposing a causation requirement creates a host of difficulties. A strict causal nexus would place the courts in the position of having to speculate whether the evidence would have been discovered had the charter violation not occurred. Speculation on what might have happened is a highly artificial task. Isolating the events that caused the evidence to be discovered from those that did not is an exercise in sophistry. Events are complex and dynamic. It will never be possible to state with certainty what would have taken place had a charter violation not occurred. Speculation of this sort is not, in my view, an appropriate inquiry for the courts. A causation requirement also leads to a narrow view of the relationship between a charter violation and the discovery of evidence. Requiring a causal link will tend to distort the analysis of the conduct that led to the discovery of evidence. The inquiry will tend to focus narrowly on the actions most directly responsible for the discovery of evidence rather than on the entire course of events leading to its discovery. This will almost inevitably lead to an intellectual endeavor essentially amounting to splitting hairs between conduct that violated the Charter and that which did not. In my view, directing the initial inquiry in Section 24.2 to the existence of a causal connection between the Charter violation and the evidence whose exclusion is sought will encourage this type of restrictive approach to the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Charter. The Chief Justice goes on to explain the need for the alternative approach of a temporal connection when assessing whether a Charter was violated in the course of evidence being obtained. In my view, all of the pitfalls of causation may be avoided by adopting an approach that focuses on the entire chain of events during which the Charter violation occurred and the evidence was obtained. Accordingly, the first inquiry under Section 24.2 would be to determine whether a Charter violation occurred in the course of obtaining the evidence. A temporal link between the infringement of the Charter and the discovery of the evidence figures prominently in this assessment, particularly where the Charter violation and the discovery of the evidence occur in the course of a single transaction. Here, Chief Justice Dixon explains that the once causal approach was too narrow and the first stage of the Section 24.2 assessment would benefit from a temporal connection concerned with the entire transaction between an accused and the police officer. The Chief Justice used the matter of Regina versus Cohen to illustrate a scenario where an accused, suspected of being in possession of cocaine, was put into an illegal chokehold by RCMP officers to locate cocaine possibly in her mouth. The results of the chokehold were negative, but another officer who frisked the accused and searched her purse later located cocaine. In this example, Chief Justice Dixon believed that a causal approach would be too narrow and too restrictive, threatening to reduce the purpose of Section 24.2. Although Chief Justice spoke about the need to include a temporal connection approach to assessing Charter violations, he also expressed the need for courts to have discretion when applying this alternative approach. The presence of a temporal connection is not, however, determinative. Situations will arise where evidence, though obtained following the breach of a Charter right, will be too remote from the violation to be obtained in a manner that infringed the Charter. In my view, these situations should be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. There can be no hard and fast rule for determining when evidence obtained following the infringement of a Charter right becomes too remote. To translate the Chief Justice, a temporal connection will not always be definitive, as there will be situations where the infringement was too remote for the evidence to be deemed obtained in a manner that infringed upon a Charter right. We will speak more about remoteness in the next chapter.